It's optional.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Chris Tuders, and I will be your worship leader this morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church. We're so glad to have each and every one of you with us today. We are a free religious community held together not by a dogma or creed, but by our commitment to the Unitarian Universalist principles, which you will find on the back of your order of service. You will also find a short questionnaire that we encourage you to fill out and drop in the basket outside where we recycle the bulletins. At this time, we invite you to share announcements and welcome our visitors and guests. If you have an announcement, please raise your hand and we'll bring a microphone to you. Are there any visitors or guests who would like to introduce themselves? You can raise your hand and we'll bring a microphone to you.
Can you all? This is my brother Stephen visiting for Christmas from Minneapolis.
Hi, Stephen.
I have a fast announcement. I was just outside. The coffee is here for anybody who wants any, and I do have it for sale downstairs, so that covers.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, at this time, please rise and body your spirit as you are able to sing our congregational introit hymn number 361 in your great hymnal.
Just the first three verses.
And we'll sing just the first 3 verses. Covenant words this morning are from James Villablake, and we will affirm them together. Please turn to number 473 in your great hymnal. Lo is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Our opening words this morning are by Amy Bowden Freeman. Once more, the earth has turned toward the light of the sun. As we are bathed in the light of a new day, so may we greet the dawning of fresh possibility. Once more, we awaken from our slumber, as our bodies rise to meet the challenges and pleasures of living. So may our hearts and minds open with promise. Once more we gather for worship. As we join our voices in word and song, so may this assembly bring forth wholeness. Come, let us worship. This morning the chalice will be lit by Bree Ward. Our chalice lighting words are by Gordon B. McKeeman. Deep calls unto deep, joy calls unto joy, light calls unto light. Let the kindling of this flame rekindle in us the inner light of love, of peace, of hope. And as one flame lights another, nor grows the less, we pledge ourselves to be. Thank you, Bree. And now please rise and body your spirit as you are able to sing hymn number 235, Deck the Halls.
Season to be jolly.
first reading is by Richard M. Fuchs, and it is titled Seasons of Our Lives. Creator of all times and seasons, and of all the seasons of our lives, we gather in this place, thankful for the days that have been, even those that have tried our souls, and hopeful for the days that shall be, even those that shall demand of us the best that we have of faith and hope and courage. Till we have become one with ourselves and thee in all the seasons to come, from the glad renewal of spring to the summer autumn days of green and gold and yellow, and the shining colors of fruition and harvest, to the white wisdom days of winter, where all things wait in patience for the change that shall bring transformation. Our second reading is a responsive reading. I will read a line, and you will respond with "The light is reborn." In the greatest darkness,
The light is reborn.
out of winter's cold,
The light is reborn.
from our deepest fears,
The light is reborn.
when we most despair,
The light is reborn.
when all seems lost,
The light is reborn.
when the earth lies waste,
The light is reborn.
when animals hide,
The light is reborn.
when the leaves are gone,
The light is reborn.
when the river is frozen,
The light is reborn.
when the ground is hard,
The light is reborn.
shadows are fleeing,
The light is reborn.
light is returning,
The light is reborn.
warmth will come again,
The light is reborn.
summer will be here once more,
The light is reborn.
plants will grow again,
The light is reborn.
animals will be seen once more,
The light is reborn.
green will come again,
The light is reborn.
life will continue.
The light is reborn.
As we've gathered here on this Christmas day, we'd like to share with you some information about the pagan traditions of this holiday season. Today's service will focus on the pagan origins of this holiday. Although pagans walk many different paths, the following information is generally accepted by nearly all traditions as the foundation for this holiday we know as Yule. We will share with you some stories that have been passed down through the generations in some form to help explain why we celebrate this time. But first, let's start with some basic information. We will be explaining the wheel of the year. Thomas?
There's a simple story that humans have been telling once another since before time. This story is about the cycle of birth, growth, death, and renewal. This story is reflected in the changing of the seasons and the rolling of the days from one dawn until the next. This story knows no social or cultural boundaries, and it crosses religious and political lines without exception. The Wheel of the Year celebrates the duality at the heart of many pagan beliefs: life and death, growth and decline, light and darkness. The ever-changing cycle of natural renewal, as reflected in the seasonal changes of nature, moving from spring to summer, to autumn to winter, and back to the spring, are reflected and celebrated in relation to solar and agricultural events. This cycle of renewal is reflected in the legends of the Wheel of the Year, which is first divided into 4 segments, divided by the midpoints of each of the 4 seasons, known as the winter solstice, the vernal equinox, the summer solstice, and the autumnal equinox. These seasonal midpoints would be the solar events observed in the Wheel of the Year and could be pretty much celebrated anywhere as they relate to the position of the sun relative to the earth. These seasonal or solar midpoints are further divided by 4 agricultural celebrations, which may vary according to where you are on the earth. That is to say, Australian harvest days may be exactly opposite to Western European harvest days, and so the agricultural celebrations may have different names or meanings depending on this natural season relative to different climates. This particular wheel of the year is based upon North American climatological influences and assigns the agricultural celebrations to dates according to around February 2nd, which is Imbolc, May the 1st, which is Beltane, August 2nd, which is Lammas, and October 31st, which is Samhain. Combined, these 8 divisions, or spokes of the wheel of the year, are known as quarters and cross quarters of the year.
Thank you, Thomas. So now you may be asking yourself, what is Yule? Yule is the ancient name for the winter solstice, the longest night and the shortest day of the year. In northern climates, this is the darkest and coldest time of the year. The sun seems to be weak and even dying, and we fear that it will last forever. But just as soon as the solstice passes, the days begin to grow longer again. The solstice is a turning point in the wheel of the year, when the sun symbolically dies and is reborn from the womb of the goddess. In pagan tradition, darkness is not something bad or something to fear. Of course, we wouldn't want the world to be dark all the time. That's why we're so happy when the sun begins to return after long nights of winter. Light and darkness must always be in balance. But we know without dark, nothing could live or grow. Without night, we would have no day, no chance to rest and sleep. We would have no dreams, and dreams are our gateway to the other world. Babies develop in the darkness of their mother's wombs. Seeds must be put in the dark earth in order to send out roots and push up new shoots. Now at solstice, the balance has tipped as far toward the dark as it can go. We are ready for the light to come back, and we must do all we can to help it. Yule is also one of the words Christians use for Christmas season. This time of year was sacred long before the birth of Christ. Nobody really knows what time of the year Jesus was born, but because people were so used to celebrating this season, the early church chose it for one of their most important holidays. During this season, people of many different religions try to strengthen the light. Pagans and Christians bring an evergreen tree inside and decorate it with twinkling lights and shiny ornaments to remind us that life goes on, even in the depth of winter. Jewish people light candles for 8 nights, adding one more each night to the Hanukkah menorah. African American people celebrate Kwanzaa, lighting candles for 7 nights to symbolize the qualities of unity, self-determination, collective work, responsibility, cooperative economics, purpose, creativity, and faith. And finally, Jamie will share with us some information about the Yule Log.
In the song Deck the Halls, there's a line that goes, "See the blazing Yule before us." What that line is referring to is the Yule log in the hearth. And you can imagine my surprise when I made this connection in the shower one morning. Been dying to share this with you all. So the Yule log is the central part of Yule festivities. The Yule log is kindled from the remains of the previous year's Yule fire. Traditionally, the log was kept in the home throughout the year for protection. The Yule log symbolizes the light returning to comfort the darkness. According to tradition, the Yule log must either have been harvested from the householder's land or given as a gift. It must never have been bought. Once dragged into the house and placed in the fire pit, it was decorated with seasonal greenery, doused with cider or ale, and dusted with flour before being set ablaze. The log would burn throughout the night and then smolder for 12 days after before being ceremonially put out. Now, we obviously can't burn a Yule log in here, so we've come up with a more contemporary version of the traditional Yule log, which is this thing over here. And you can see that we've decorated it with greenery, And Chris has added some pine cones and some antlers that he ran across somewhere between here and there. And we actually have candles that are going to go in the top, and we'll light them up, and that'll be our blazing Yule.
Thank you, Jamie. At this time, we'll now symbolically consecrate the Yule log. The reason we do this rite is to cleanse the Yule log and dedicate it for its purpose, and to charge it with the energy of our intentions.
Inspired with air. Enlightened with fire. Cleansed with water. Strengthened with earth. And then infused with spirit.
Now is the moment of magic when the whole round earth turns again toward the sun. And here's a blessing. The days will be longer and brighter now, even before the winter settles in to chill us.
Now is the moment of Now is the moment of magic, when people beaten down and broken, with nothing left but misery and candles, and their own clear voices, kindle tiny lights and whisper secret music. And here's a blessing: the dark universe is suddenly illuminated by the lights of the menorah, suddenly ablaze with the lights of the Kinara, and the whole world is clad and loud with winter singing.
Now is the moment of magic, when an Easter star beckons the ignorant toward an unknown goal. And here's a blessing: they find nothing in the end but an ordinary baby, born at midnight, born in poverty, and the baby's cry, like bells ring, makes people wonder as they wander through their lives what human love might really look like, sound like, and feel like.
Now is the moment of magic, and here's the blessing. We already possess all the gifts we need. We've already received all our presents. Ears to hear music, eyes to behold lights, hands to build true peace on earth, and to hold each other tight in love.
Now it is time for us to share some stories with you to help explain why and what we celebrate at Yule. First, Thomas will share with us the story of the Holly King and the Oak King.
All right, this is a story that was written by Linda Paul. Basically, in Celtic mythology, the Oak King and the Holly King are twins. Every year at winter and the summer solstices, these two fight for dominance. In actuality, these brothers are two parts of the same thing, the waxing and the waning of the yearly cycles of the earth. The Holly King rules over the waning year, from midsummer to Yule, and the Oak King rules the waxing year from Yule to midsummer. The Holly King represents darkness, decay, and destruction, and is often seen as Hades, lord of the underworld, who, as we'll learn a little bit later here, kidnapped beautiful Persephone and plunged the earth into winter. He also represents inner knowledge and mysteries. The Oak King, on the other hand, represents light, growth, and expansion. These two mighty kings fight a symbolic battle to win as the crown of the year. At Yule, when the Oak King wins, and at midsummer, when the Holly King wins. To early Celts, trees, especially the oak tree, were considered sacred. Oak trees are deciduous, meaning that they grow into a dormant state during the winter months. English Christmas holly trees are evergreen and maintain their foliage year-round. As the cold winter approached and the oak trees lost their foliage, the holly trees, which had been hidden amid the leafy oaks, now stood out in their full beauty in the barren landscape. At midwinter, it seemed that the Holly King had won, and his brother, the mighty Oak King, now stood naked in defeat. But the Holly King did not really win that battle, because the sun begins to return once again. The Oak King rallies and begins to re-establish his supremacy, even though it won't be until midsummer when the oaks will once again be in full foliage. The battle continues as midsummer, as the Oak King appears to win, overshadowing and pushing his opponent out of sight. But once again, appearances are deceptive as the sun begins to leave once more, and the Holly King rallies and begins to make its full appearance once more. Interesting enough, it is the time in which each king is his full strength and splendor, and that he is defeated by his opponent. The story of the Holly King and the Oak King represents the constant struggle we all endure in our lives. Darkness and death are as much a part of our lives as life and birth, and the experiences that each present to our opportunities for us to learn and grow.
Thank you, Thomas. And now Jamie will share with us the story of Demeter and Persephone.
In Greek mythology, Zeus, the king of the gods, had 3 wives. Hera, his sister and wife, who was the goddess of marriage. Hestia, the goddess of the hearth and the home. And Demeter, the goddess of the harvest. Everyone, gods and mortals alike, worked very hard to keep Demeter happy, because if she became upset, the crops would wither and die. But there was no creature on heaven or earth that Demeter loved as much as her daughter Persephone. Persephone was a beautiful, happy girl who Demeter loved so much that she took her along wherever she tended her grain fields. One day while Demeter tended her fields, Persephone strayed from her ever watchful mother's eye. And as she stopped to pick up a particularly lovely narcissist, she was kidnapped by the ruler of the underworld, Hades. Demeter searched in vain for her lost daughter and feared that she would never see her beloved Persephone again. And as Demeter mourned, she withdrew her touch from the land, and the world became barren, and the plants withered and died. Demeter arrived in the city of Attica in Eurystheus, where she was welcomed by a king and commanded that a temple be built in her honor. It was in the temple of Eurystheus that Demeter secluded herself from the world. On earth, the people were dying from lack of food, and the gods begged Demeter to reconsider. Finally, Triptolemus, one of the sons of the king, went to Demeter and related to her a strange tale that he had heard. It seemed that on the day of Persephone's disappearance, he had been tending to a flock of sheep and had witnessed as the ground opened up and Hades himself appeared. Then he heard a young girl scream and Hades disappeared again, the ground closing up behind him. Demeter immediately knew what had happened to her daughter and, enraged, went to Zeus and demanded Persephone's return. It was then that Demeter learned that Persephone had tasted the fruit of the dead and the pomegranate seed and would be required to remain in the underworld. But rather than have the mortals suffer, Zeus came up with a compromise to the situation. Persephone would remain in her dark place under the earth for 1/3 of the year, and the rest of the time she would spend with Demeter. I took a Greek mythology class when I was in college, and my professor, Dr. Capellas, told me that out of all of the different pantheons, the Greek was his favorite. First of all, he said because these were his people, he was Greek. And second, because no one does dysfunction like Greek families, in his opinion. And that dysfunction is reflected in their gods. So to kind of give you an example, in this story alone, Demeter is betrayed by 2 of her family members. In the story of Demeter and Persephone, it's usually, people usually focus on is that reunion between the mother and the daughter that happens in the springtime. But if we only focus on that aspect of the story, we miss some really important elements, some dark elements that are very poignant and very timeless. Unfortunately, betrayal is not exclusive to the gods, is it? Sometimes years of serious dysfunction mark family gatherings that happen at this time of year, and they become unpleasant and uncomfortable and frankly stressful. And even if your lot is not so dramatic, the vast majority of us have that one relative, either close or distant, who just has no idea how their actions affect other people. Or maybe you're the black sheep of the family. They make movies about these kinds of misadventures. It's kind of a gallows humor of the holidays, a way to keep things in perspective. Like Thomas mentioned, the dark half of the year is the time for serious reflection and reckoning on past actions. If we close our eyes for just a moment, we can imagine Persephone sitting alone, thinking about what she might have been able to do to prevent the loss of her daughter. Sometimes our choices have lasting negative consequences on our lives, and we think about what we could have done differently, or how we account or atone for what we have done. And if we spend too much time focusing on our mistakes, it leads us to debilitating guilt, regret, and isolation. And also, it's not hard to imagine the kind of grief that Persephone felt at the loss of her daughter. There's a word for a woman who loses her husband. She's a widow. But there's no word for a woman that loses her child. It's that deep. There is not a word in our language that exists for it. And many people experience all different types of grief or separation, whether it's a physical separation, emotional, mental, or spiritual. These are things that happen at this time of year. So often it's not joyful for a lot of people. But universally, something else that is represented in this story is the light of truth and the promise of reunion. And also universally, every culture has that promise, whether it's the reunion of a loved one after death, or in the next life, or in the springtime. This is a season about hope, and this is what that story represents.
Thank you, Jenny. And I'll share with you a story. It's a family story out of the book titled Circle Round. And the story is titled The Rebirth of the Sun, and it's written by Starhawk. Circle round, and I'll tell you a story when the sun was born again. It was the middle of winter, and the sun had grown very old. All year long, the sun had worked very hard, rising and setting day after day. All year long, the sun had fed everybody on earth, shining and shining, giving energy to the trees and the flowers and the grasses, so they could grow and feed the animals and birds and insects and people. All year, the sun's gravity held tight to the spinning ball of the earth and the twirling ball of the moon and the 8 other whirling planets as they traveled around and around and around until the poor sun was dizzy watching it all. Now the poor sun, tired, could barely make it up in the morning, and after a very short time needed to sleep again. So the days grew shorter and the nights grew longer, until the day was so short it was hardly worth getting up for. Night felt sorry for the sun. "Come to my arms and rest, child," she said. "After all, I am your mother. You were born out of my darkness billions of years ago, and you will return to me when all things end. Let me cradle you now, as I shelter every galaxy and star in the universe." So Night wrapped her great arms around the sun, and the night was very long indeed. "Why does the dark go on so long?" asked children all over the earth. "Won't the sun ever come back again?" "The sun is very tired," the old one said. "But maybe, if you children say thank you for all the things the sun does for us, the light may return in the morning." The children sang songs to the sun. They thought about all the things the sun gave them. "Thank you for growing the lettuces and the corn and the rice and the wheat," they said. "Thank you for growing the trees and forests and the seaweed in the oceans and the krill that feeds the whales. Thank you for stirring the air and making winds that bring the rain." Every time a child said thank you, the sun began to feel a little warmer, a little brighter. Wrapped safely in the arms of night, the sun grew younger and younger. At last the children had to go to bed. "We will stay up all night and wait for the sun to rise again," the old one said. "Can we stay up too?" the children asked. "You can try, but you will get too sleepy," the old one said. "But you can each light a candle, because all fire is a spark of the sun's fire. Put your candle in a very safe place, and let it keep vigil for you as you sleep and dream of sunrise." So the children lit their candles and put them in very safe places, and each flame was a little spark of the sun's fire. And the sun peeped out from between the arms of night and saw all the little fires and began to feel warmer and brighter and younger still. Early in the morning, the old ones woke the children. Together they climbed a high hill and faced to the east, the direction of the sunrise. They sang songs to the sun and ran around trying to keep warm. They waited and waited to see what dawn would bring. The sky began to turn from black to indigo to blue. Slowly the sky grew light. A golden glow crept over the horizon. Night opened her great arms, and in a burst of brightness the sun appeared, new, strong, and shining. For in the long night the sun had rested, well and grown young from the songs and the thanks of the children, young as a brand new baby, born out of night once more. Everybody cheered, and the children jumped up and down. The sun has returned. The sun is reborn, the people cried. And they danced and sang to celebrate the birth of a new day, and then went home to breakfast. In the spirit of the last story, we ask you now to come forward and take a yellow candle and light it in silence or with a brief verbal expression of a special joy that you had received this past year.
I graduated from college last summer. I have a great family.
I've got great, wonderful friends and family that stick it through me through thick and thin.
You guys can go ahead and come up as you wish.
I started going to this church. It's Christmas.
I've made many Bhutanese friends, and I enjoy working with them on learning English.
I became a grandfather for the second time.
Irish independence.
I am not walking with a cane on muscle relaxers or painkillers.
Oh, that's a big deal.
I sent $466 to the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee from this church. I'm willing to send more.
Being able to see my mom on Christmas.
Seeing Forrest after 4 months.
Being able to spend Christmas with my friends and family.
Be grateful that it's Christmas holiday. And I have lots of presents.
Yes, I've got a couple things here. One, I'm grateful to be able to find this church and be a part of this community that we've built here and learn to grow spiritually and share this with everyone that comes here. And second great thing that happened to me this year is really being able to build my family in the house that we have and be close to the rest of my family. And finding and proposing to an amazing woman that I would hope to spend the rest of my life with. At this time, we ask you to rise and body your spirit as you are able to join us in singing hymn number 19 in your great hymnal, The Sun That Shines. Those who'd like to follow along, our Offertory Reading is number 673 in the Gray Hymnal. Freely have we received of the gifts that minister to our needs of body and spirit. gladly we bring to our church and its wide concerns a portion of this bounty. At this time, we will receive an offering for the well-being of the church. In addition, we invite you to give your spare change for the Change for Change campaign that supports the social justice work of this church. This offering is a sacrament of the Free Church. It is supported by the voluntary generosity of all who join with us. The offering will now be given and received in grateful appreciation of our shared hopes and values. As the baskets are passed, please enjoy the musical offering of Suzanne Strauss.
I think you can hear me, hopefully, without a microphone. My name's Tom Richmond. I'm a member of the board. I was surprised when I walked in this morning because I was supposed to be the usher, and Jamie suddenly came up and said, "You're the worship leader," and that always panics me because I don't know what to say. Nobody told me I was a worship leader. So I don't think Chris made that correction, and I think Chris has done a great job. We like people to step forward. Christmas is a difficult day for us sometimes, but I want you to know that there's lots of bountiful food downstairs. Both Don and Ruth have, I think, prepared quite a very acceptable treat for you to enjoy, or treats I should say. Don will be leaving. They volunteered to do this today because Don will be leaving at the end of the week or so for some supplemental cancer treatments that he goes to for another state. And Ruth came in this morning and said, "Oh, there's not as many as I expected. I don't know what to do with all that food." So since they've gone down, I'm inviting you. Please join us. Ruth can't save it all, she says.
Now please rise and body your spirit as you are able. Excuse me, in the wrong place. Our closing words are by Susan Carlson. We leave blessed by our connections to one another, to the spirit of life. Walk lightly that you see the life that is below your feet. Spread your arms as if you had wings and could dance through the air. Feel the joy of breath in your lungs and the fire in your heart. Live to love and be a blessing on this earth. This time we will extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this chalice flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. We carry these in our hearts until we meet again. And now please join us in our recessional, number 413 in your great hymnal, Go Now in Peace. If you are new to the UU Church and want further information, we offer a brief presentation on the major tenets of our faith in the lobby, as illustrated by the picture there. And as Tom said, please join us downstairs for refreshments and fellowship. And once again, we'd like to encourage you to fill out the evaluation questionnaire in your bulletin and drop it in the basket where we recycle the rest of the bulletins.